Good afternoon. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about a couple things. Movie news, like usual. I'll do a little bit of a movie review. This week, there was nothing. Obviously, The Odyssey is dominating the box office right now. So there's not a lot of new features that are really super piqued my interest. I did go see Her Private Hell, so we'll talk a little bit about that. And then we're going to talk about just a recap up through the first half of 2026 so far, and do something that I'm going to call the 1, 3, and the 5. So that's going to be one movie that didn't quite live up to expectations, 3 hidden gems that I would like more people to see, that were pretty entertaining, but maybe not a lot of people have seen it, or at least the discourse around the films is a lot smaller. And then we're going to go through my top 5 movies of the year so far. And this is going up through the end of June, like July 1st cutoff. And so obviously the Odyssey is not applicable for this, but we'll just kind of be talking about 2026 so far. We got a lot more to look forward to for the rest of 2026. And some of that we're going to be talking about in movie news. But first, I want to talk about the Odyssey. So obviously talked about that on the podcast last week. It was a very enjoyable movie. And a lot of people are going and seeing it. People who don't usually buy a ticket are going out watching this movie. It's making a lot of money. And so for the weekend alone, it made $123 million domestically. That's a great starting run. And it's going to keep going. The second half is projected to just have a 32% decline and projected somewhere around 84.5 million. But that's just the second weekend. Throughout the week, it's been growing and growing. Last I checked, it was somewhere nearing 200 million. So definitely a very successful film. Nolan's bringing it back. People like his movies and they're going out. I mean, you get some free marketing when there's the free memes of everyone posting, seeing the Odyssey the way it was intended. A lot of discourse around this film. A lot of people going out and seeing it. So another interesting thing that was reported by the Hollywood Reporter on the Odyssey is that half the opening weekend audience was between 18 and 34. And like we've talked about before, this shows an increase in Gen Z, late millennials, really showing an interest in cinema and film, going out. Letterboxd, apps like Letterboxd, the Criterion Collection, things like this have really increased online discourse about films and finding films that maybe people wouldn't have heard of otherwise, and getting people very interested in film. And beyond that, people are going to their local AMC, Cinemark, and watching new movies from directors they care about, people like Denis Villeneuve and Christopher Nolan. So definitely a boom is happening in people of my generation going out and seeing the movies. That's pretty impressive that such a small age range group is responsible for so much of the Odyssey box office. And I don't know why it's more that group other than some of the comments that I've already stated, but I can say that some of the coworkers I talk to that are older and stuff, a lot of them rely, they've really bought into the streaming, and they like to wait for movies to come out on streaming. They like to wait for it on virtual on demand, just stay at home and watch it as well. So that might be some of it for sure, but definitely a lot of the discourse is online. Younger audiences see that, and younger audiences like going out and paying to go see some of the great movies coming out. So interesting news for the Odyssey. We'll see how it performs this second weekend. So on top of that, Paramount and Warner Brothers also released a statement saying that they're going to hold the merger till at least June of 2027. So there's a lot of pushback. There's a judge considering a challenge from 12 states trying to block the deal. And we'll see. So at least it's on pause for people who are opposed to that. That might be good news. Certainly production still moving forward on a lot of projects. DCU still going strong at Warner Brothers despite the low performance of Supergirl earlier this year, and Paramount is still coming out with projects as well, and planning to release projects. New news coming out about Paramount projects moving forward as well. some that we might get into later on in this podcast as well. One thing that I will say that I find interesting is there's a question of do they think that they will be able to do this merger? And I will say, while I'm not a fan of merging and the monopolization of these movie industries, the Paramount Warner Brothers is at least less bad, in my opinion, than Netflix would have been. Obviously, as we just talked about, a ton of people went and saw The Odyssey in IMAX and different formats around the country and around the world this last weekend. And it's just Netflix is so opposed to the theater industry, and they want you on their platform. They want you at home, on your phone, even watching it on the toilet, right? The way they intend. And that is Netflix's kind of goal. And so if Warner Brothers had sold to them, I think that would have been a less good of a deal, in my opinion, than Paramount. I also say that, and this is also why I believe the Paramount merger will probably go through. So earlier this year, CNBC posted 2025, what did the market share look like for all these different companies? And Paramount had only 6% market share in 2025. So definitely, while they're one of the major powerhouses of history, recent years they've not nearly been as strong. And that could be a little concerning, especially if there's a merger. You definitely hope that they don't bring Paramount and Warner Brothers down with them. I know Ellison's promised like tons of movies per year. We'll see if he can keep up with that promise. But they're only 6% of the market share. And Warner Brothers is 21%. Warner Brothers is definitely one of the big ones, right? 6% is only double, to put it in perspective, the market share of A24. So definitely it's almost gotten to the size of like a small studio. And what's wild to me is that even if Warner Brothers market share is merged with Paramount's market share from 2025, but that still only accounts for a total together of 27%, if I can do my math right? And that's still less than Disney, 20th Century Fox, and Searchlight combined, the Disney products, right? Their market share of 2025. So, and this is also not counting Netflix, because this was based on box office. So we don't know. I know Netflix does have a huge presence in film and TV these days. They do have a larger market share if you go by other metrics. But I think that's interesting, and that is why personally I do think, whether we want it to or not, it's probably going to go through, because they can show, hey, Paramount plus Warner Brothers is still less than Disney. And looking at things on the bright side, I do think hopefully that means it was still a focus on theatrical, still a major studio making movies the way they've always been made. And that's a great presence. You have A24 and Neon highlighting these foreign films, these more unique projects. You have Disney holding the kids' share of the market. You have Netflix trying to do something new. In a glass half full looking, Paramount and Warner's is probably one of the better options we could have gotten there. There's obviously questions about how much politics will tie into that, and I really hope it doesn't tie into much. At the end of the day, they're there to make money, so hopefully that they allow people to share their different opinions and perspectives of the world. That's the way film's supposed to be, and hopefully that continues. But that's just a look at that merger. In other news, The Possession, and speaking of Paramount, The Possession remake has started filming. And this is funny because it's just a week after Sam Neill has died. I had just watched it for the first time ever. And now there's people taking pictures in New York City. You can see Margaret Qualley running through like the street corner and screaming and kind of embodying her own Isabella Adjani. And I think it's going to be interesting. It was, I think, last year that Paramount had just won a bidding war for this movie, and Parker Finn's directing it. He's the director of the Smile franchise. So we're going to see. It's definitely timely news for sure. Callum Turner, Paul Dano, Diego Calva are all posed to star alongside her in various roles. It's going to be shot on 35mm film. That's pretty interesting. So definitely going for a more, hopefully tonally similar, interesting look to the first one. And I will say, Margaret Qualley is a pretty good pick. She obviously has experience in films like this. She's very, known for her role in The Substance. And she, just look-wise, she looks very much like Isabelle Adjani in her own way. And so if you're going to make a remake, casting looks pretty good so far. Now, whether she's going to be able to embody that freaked out possession of the original film is a question. Whether this even needed to be a film is another question. And we've talked a lot about this already on the podcast, sequels, remakes, all this stuff. I don't know. I'm at least curious with this one. I enjoyed the first. I'd be curious. It's definitely a very confusing movie. The director himself was going through a divorce at the time, or had just gone through a divorce at least, and definitely a major influence into the style and the experience of that film. I find it a little interesting that recently Jack Antoff and Margaret Qualley have split after the 3 years of marriage. Maybe she can channel that into some of the performance as well. Still an unnecessary movie. We have a really great one that looks really great too. It's not like a black and white movie from the 20s with no audio that they're remaking. It's a movie from 81 that looks beautiful, is shot beautifully, acted amazingly. Sam Neill did great. Isabelle Adjani, obviously, a freaked out star in that. I mean, that U-Bahn scene of her throwing the milk all over the walls is just terrifying and really scares you in an uneasy way. So probably not necessary, but I am curious, and that should be coming out probably in the next year or so. So I'll be curious we'll be talking about it then and see how it compares, if they actually added something different or a new take, a twist, a modern viewpoint through the film. I don't know, but that's to be seen. In other news, there's a lot of news coming with the Venice Film Festival. The slate was dropped. One noticeable omission was Luca Guadagnino's Artificial. Obviously, there's been a lot of news about this film recently. Amazon was originally supposed to be distributing it and releasing it. They decided to not. And obviously Amazon, these big tech companies, and a film made by a very, thoughtful creator on it, AI, there might be some clashing there. So Neon's bought it, which is a great studio to highlight something like this, and not going to be premiered at the Venice Film Festival, but from what we understand, it will premiere prior to the end of this year somewhere so that it can qualify for the Oscar race, and then probably in 2027 it'll be released to the general audience, which unfortunately for me is probably when I will get to see it, right? It'll be interesting. But The Hollywood Reporter did interview the Venice chief, Alberto Barbera, about this, and he was talking about Artificial, and he said, quote, "Yes, I saw the film. I love the movie. I think it's a great, great movie. The only problem was Neon only bought it a few weeks ago. It's after Amazon dropped the film. And he had a long discussion with Tom Quinn. He said he was very sorry. He sees the film as a strong contender for the Oscars next week, but they won't be ready to release the movie until early 2027. They'll do a release in December to qualify for the Oscars, but they aren't ready yet. I think that the film was probably quite expensive for them. They spent a lot of money to buy the film. Now they need to sell it all over the world, and they don't want to premiere the film before selling it everywhere. So they decided to skip the fall festivals for a straight commercial release. It's unfortunate because the film is really, really good." That's an interesting take from the Venice chief. Obviously, noticeable omission on the sheet there. So excited to see this one. Very curious what it's going to be talking about, how it's going to approach the subject in an age where AI is increasingly talked about, and in an age where big tech corporations, Apple, Amazon, are a huge part of the filmmaking world and are clearly saying no to projects like this. And that's an interesting take, right? Obviously, people are concerned about what's Paramount's connections with certain political parties going to influence what they release once the merger, if it happens. But there's a big question of people like Apple TV, people like Amazon. What are their releases like, or how do they shape the way we view tech and topics like that? So definitely interesting. Another interesting conversation to come out of the Venice lineup is that only one female-directed film made the cut this year out of 20 directors. So once again, the Venice chief said, "I'm very sorry about that. I'm actually desperate. I would love to be able to find more films, more female-directed films to put in competition. But it simply was not possible for many reasons. The number of films made by women has decreased, which is quite strange and hard to understand. From 2018, 2019, 2020, we saw the figures improving year after year. From female directors making up to 18 to 19% of film production to more than 30%. But for feature films, there were fewer than 24% directed by women. That's this year. And the quality of the ones we saw was not such that we could put them into competition. The only one was from the Danish director. And that Danish director is May Eltoki. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. And it's going to be Woman Unknown. And definitely interesting. I'm curious what will come out of Venice. Obviously, I am not in a position where I will be at Venice to see all those, but obviously getting into fall festival time, getting to see some of these releases for the commercial releases as well, it's going to be exciting. It's always fun leading into the Oscars and Oscar race and all the award season. So definitely going to be interesting to keep an eye on this year. They did say, and he was responding to a comment about originally they were saying, hey, by 2020, they wanted to have like 50-50 representation. And I understand the heart behind that, but I do think what he's doing is the better way. Certainly want more perspectives on film, certainly want to see female perspectives on film. But at the end of the day, you want really good movies, and we need to be, encouraging more females, more people of different perspectives to come and make good films. And as that pool of available films increases, the select few that are outstanding are going to shine through and really shine a light on different perspectives. We've had many amazing female directors over history. I really love Greta Gerwig's films. I really love Agnes Varda's films as well. So definitely an important thing. But I do think in the competition, this is probably the proper way to go about it, is to select the ones that you think are going to be the best and show the best perspective of 2026, the world we're in right now. And, each festival has its own different ways of choosing films, and Venice has their own version, and that's how it is. So definitely interesting. Other big names that are going to be in that festival is Primetime. That's the Robert Pattinson movie. Wild Horse 9 and Bucking Faster, which will be interesting as well. So definitely a couple I'm looking forward to, and we're going to see how award season shapes up and what are the standout movies. It's honestly something that's kind of surprising. We know months in advance, years in advance in some cases. Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey is going to be big. Avengers Doomsday is shaping up to be a pretty big movie already. But some of these niche films, like we've said last week, Anora kind of came out of nowhere, at least for the common audience. And I was aware of One Battle After Another last year, but for the average viewer, that one too just kind of appeared. Some people went and saw it in theaters. A lot more people saw it when it dropped on Max. And obviously it built a very strong campaign towards its Oscar win as well. So, in addition to all the news that we talked about, there's been a lot of trailers being released, and there's too many to really talk about. I mean, there's a new Ebenezer Scrooge movie with Johnny Depp that looks interesting. There's a bunch of shows coming out. Looks like there's a new Neuromancer Apple TV show. There's going to be a Blade Runner 2099 Amazon Prime show with Hunter Schafer. Definitely big time for sci-fi these days. But I wanted to talk about a couple that I saw that I've found really interesting. Obviously, tend to be more movie focused, as that is the nature of this podcast. But wanted to talk about 3 or 4 here. So the first one I want to talk about is the Resident Evil trailer. This one I am very excited about. Zach Kreger obviously has made some great horror movies, and it's going to be interesting seeing him go into a franchise, a big IP. I never really played the games. The only influence and input I've seen is the very first 2002 movie with Mila Jovovich. I enjoyed it. It was fun. It's obviously not a masterpiece, and I didn't play the game, so my connection to that piece of art and that franchise is a lot less. I know people who actually played the game might have had a lot more nitpicks to pick with that movie. It was a fine movie. It was a fun movie. It's a nice little popcorn flick to put on. But this one, from the trailer alone, looks way more artistic, way more interesting. The shots look beautiful. They look creepy. There's definitely a sense of fear, of dread around. And it's going to be followed by led by a character played by Austin Abrams, who's a medical courier, and we see him going on different runs with bags of organs, which is kind of fitting for the franchise one, and going to deliver them to different hospitals where they're needed. I also found it interesting, at least with the first movie, again, my only exposure, very urban sci-fi vibe to that. And this looks a lot more out in the woods. There's a, lone house, kind of maybe home invasion, protection, at least part of it. There's definitely shots in the trailer that look like they're going to get into that urban, Raccoon City. They do name drop Raccoon City later on in the trailer for, fans of the franchise. So definitely shaping up to be an interesting film. Zach Kreger's obviously making, at least from what I understand, he's making a story set in the world. It's not necessarily a direct adaptation or of anything. He's just taking his horror expertise and applying it to this franchise. I'm curious. It looks pretty good, and I like a good horror movie, and especially one that has a little bit of lore behind it too. So that's kind of the perfect potent mix here. I'm excited to see what it's going to shape up to be coming out this fall. And also Paul Walter Hauser and Zach Cherry are supposedly in it. We see Paul Walter Hauser in the trailer. They're two of my favorite supporting actors in a lot of movies. They're really funny. Zach Cherry in Severance is just amazing. Paul Walter Hauser does a great job in Americana last year, at least the wide release last year. He did great job in I, Tonya as well. So some of my favorites, and they're also going to be in this. This is definitely shaping up to be an interesting movie for me. They're playing Umbrella Scientists, I believe, for people familiar with that franchise. So that's one of the trailers I saw this week that definitely piqued my interest. We'll be talking about it on this podcast when its release comes around. Excited for that. Excited tonally. It doesn't look like a cash grab. It looks like an artistic vision set in a world people already love. And that's really how these video game franchises should be. We're going to be talking about that more later this podcast, but a little foreshadowing there. But definitely the way I want to see more of this. If you're going to go do a franchise, right? Like what if Christopher Nolan did a video game or sci-fi franchise that's already existing? I mean, The Odyssey. He did do an adaptation, The Odyssey, right? But he would take his own spin to it, like he did with The Odyssey. He would have his own way, his artistic vision. I think Zach Kreger has that too. The ability to make both original stuff and make really good adaptations or movies set in that world is a really cool skill to have. And I'm excited to watch that movie. I really am. Some other trailers that came out in the DCU world, both Clayface and Lanterns dropped new trailers. Both of them had like a teaser trailer before, but not full trailers. So Clayface, we'll talk about that one first. It looks creepy. I'm not a big body horror guy. I like some good horror. I'll probably lean more into the cosmic horror like I said, something with lore, something intriguing. I just finished Widow's Bay recently. I really like that kind of tone with horror. And I also really just like slashers as well, things like Scream, anything where it's like a group of teenagers or college students getting hunted down one by one is just, a fun time. But body horror, something I've not really dove in much to. This is going to be definitely a different experience for me. It's definitely a different experience for DC. And some of those shots in the trailer are pretty gnarly. Seeing him sitting in the bathtub, and there's one scene where he's like looking into a mirror on a plane and his eyes are like gooped together, and he has a scissors that he's going to like try to cut his flesh to open up his eye holes to see again. Gross, creeps me out, but looks really good. Again, not name dropping Batman, not making it all about Gotham City, not making it all about, hey, you know what superheroes are, come spend your dollar over here to watch this. Once again, it looks like a creative, interesting take on something like the Resident Evil movie in a world people are already familiar with and love, but it's a different story and something maybe more niche, lower budget. We like that. And definitely a movie I'm very excited about. Tom Rhys-Harris plays Matt Hagen. So if you don't know the story, and this is kind of what the trailer was about, the trailer for Clayface definitely laid out the premise very well. He's an actor, obviously needs his face to act, and he gets in an accident. Someone disfigures his face, and then he's seeking out kind of an experimental treatment to heal him, and then ends up becoming Clayface, which is this kind of glob monster, that shape-shifting character. And Naomi Ackie is playing that. It looks like that medical specialist doing the experimental treatment. She looks like I'm really excited to see her role in it. She looks like she's really filling that role well. So it's definitely some body horror. It's not just fan service. It's got a nice tonal vibe to it. I'm certainly intrigued and excited. And I think of the two, it's probably going to be the stronger DCU film this year. With that, they also released Lanterns, which is a show, but is going to obviously play into this. I was kind of excited about this one too. There's been a lot of talk on both sides of the aisle, right? You release something that's shiny and bright and colorful, and all your critics and all your film snobs are going to be like, ooh, that looks too green to me. That looks too, Ryan Reynolds Green Lantern. I don't know if I want to see that. That being said, the very first trailer they released showed the gritty, true detective look that they're going for, and a lot of comic book fans were like, where's the green? There was some comments made by one of the show's creators about, oh, Green Lantern sounds cheesy or whatever, and I'm misquoting here. But point is, that rubbed fans the wrong way as well. And this Lantern show is supposed to be more gritty, but a lot of the fans still want to see the sci-fi elements. It's the Green Lantern's core. They're around. It's one of the most intergalactic characters and groups that there is in DC Comics. I was pleasantly surprised by the nice balance they had. This one definitely name dropped a lot more for the fans who really want to see. There's Manhunters name dropped. I'm curious if Martian Manhunter is going to make an appearance. We actually physically see Sinestro as well. There's scenes in space. There's scenes in the ground. So it definitely looks very gritty. There's a fair bit of sci-fi as well, but they seem to be working together well, not as in opposition as it could be. And we're going to see how it goes. I really like the art direction. Looks a lot more grounded than some of the other films that we've seen in the DCU already, even some of the shows. Peacemaker, great show. Definitely a bright, cheery vibe in that in that show, despite how irreverent it is. And yeah, probably considering how the first Green Lantern movie went, I think this is a good pick. They got Kelly MacDonald in it, which No Country for Old Men, that puts me like right in the mood. I haven't seen True Detective season 1. I know I need to see it, but that seeing her is like, oh, I'm in like a Coen Brothers movie now, or something a little more grounded, crime, mystery. We're trying to figure this out. So yeah, Ulrich Thompson plays Sinestro. Kyle Chandler's is Hal, and Aaron Pierre is Jon Stewart. They looked great. Nathan Fillion's returning. You see green, you see constructs. It's not this super fake looking thing like the Ryan Reynolds movie, but it's also not just, oh, they're named like Green Lanterns, but they're just walking around solving everyday murders. It does seem to be something that is more in the world of DC. It's for fans, but taking a different perspective on it. And this is where the DCU has its strengths. So far, everything we've seen has been bright, cheery, James Gunnified, Craig Gillespie, very bright, cheery, needle droppy. And now we're moving into this fall to pieces of art that look a lot more gritty, different tone, set in the same universe. I'm very curious to see how this goes. Also, I am a comic book fan, so hearing the Green Lantern oath recited by Kyle Chandler at the end, that was just kind of a cool little touch on top of it as well. Gonna see. And going along with the comic book theme, Avengers Doomsday trailer dropped. The tickets went on sale. It made $16.5 million in its first day of sales. That's Variety reporting that. That's insane. I know people who already have bought their tickets, and part of me is just curious. I'm like, why? Like, there's been zero buildup. Most of the people buying tickets right now didn't even watch half the movies and shows since Endgame. But clearly there's a draw here, and maybe I'm not quite getting it. I get the draw for something like Spider-Man. Those always do well. The Avengers movies, they were great in the 2010s, but I don't really see the draw now when, they were trying to do something with Kang, and then Jonathan Majors got fired, and now they're kind of building up the Thunderbolts, bringing in Fantastic Four, trying to kind of hodgepodge. It feels like a scrapbook or, a collage of some randomness. Very much in the comic book era, that's what comic books do well. You have different writers, different people making a bunch of different stuff. Some things sink, some things fly, but they're all in the same universe. That's kind of how it's felt at Marvel for the last, 7 years now, I guess. And I'm curious how Avengers Doomsday is going to do. It clearly seems to be on track to do very well. They seem to be relying, obviously, let's get RDJ back as Doctor Doom. We're going to get Chris Evans back as Captain America, relying a lot on those Phase 1 characters to carry it. Thor gives a lot of the dialogue in the trailer too, and you see around him a bunch of characters that probably most people can't even name at this point. And that's not a bad thing. I really think there's some great characters out there in DC and Marvel that should get more of a spotlight than just the, 5 you see from each. But that is what sells the movie. People seem to be interested in it. Obviously, artistically, it doesn't look like much. It looks like a Marvel superhero movie. But it is definitely shaping up to be more of a beginning than an end to something. And hopefully Marvel can use this to kind of kickstart the next thing. And I think they will with Secret Wars as well, setting up the X-Men. That's obviously, we see a lot of the Fox X-Men universe coming into this, which we've seen a little bit already in Deadpool and Wolverine. So they're shaping up for a new story. And it has come out this week that they've been working on things till 2042. Kevin Feige got interviewed and he said, we want to do 2 things. First, to bring some storylines to a close. Those started long before Iron Man, including the original X-Men characters. Second, to simultaneously set the stage for the future. Avengers Endgame was truly an end. That's correct. And since then, we've tried and experimented with many new things. But Secret Wars, Doomsday, it's the beginning. It will establish a streamlined, simplified, single universe that audiences can keep up with. Some things will be familiar, but many, many things will be entirely new. That's exciting. Obviously, Doomsday seems to be a lot of things we're familiar with. The last several years, the COVID era, with all the streaming shows and everything, people couldn't keep up. So it seems like they're trying to refocus. They've learned from their mistakes. And he says, we were just in Marvel Studios meeting room planning movies all the way up to 2042. Whether we can make it to 2042, who knows? Will it be those movies? Who knows? But this is how we approach and plan the vast amount of potential stories in the comics. We're constantly changing, constantly evolving, but having some guidance helps us act more purposefully, especially with X-Men. It already had 10 movies, some very, very good. Some I think haven't lived up to expectations. How do we plan the mutant saga in a very grand way? They also talked about live action Miles Morales coming up too. So X-Men, Miles Morales, new characters. They're trying to build up something. I definitely think the era is past where the entire world was interested in this. And I'm curious if they're going to be able to rebuild it. Clearly, Doomsday is doing way better than I projected that it would. And with good Spider-Man, I mean, this year Marvel has two heavy hitters going to theaters. And maybe they'll do something in one of them that makes us care enough to come back, makes it streamlined again. And who knows? It might start slow, like phase 1 again. And by 2042, maybe everyone, new generation is now fully invested in that. That's probably their best hope right now. But I don't know about that. We're going to see. They obviously weren't able to touch the X-Men before. Now they can. There's some exciting new possibilities for storytelling here for sure. But recently, a lot felt like a cash grab, too confusing. Hopefully they've learned their lesson. It seems like the way Kevin Feige is talking, they have learned at least something. So it's going to be interesting watching this going forward. I'm very curious about Doomsday. This trailer definitely did not pique my interest as a trailer. It's honestly very bland, not a lot of interesting, lots of shots of, just one person and here's another person and nothing really to say, yeah, I want to go see that movie other than familiarity. But it's not even very beautiful. Compared it to Dune, which was releasing the same day, right? Cinematography, everything is just gorgeous on that the Dune movie. So definitely not one I'm like extremely looking forward to, but I'm curious, and I'm even more just kind of perplexed with how much money it's brought in already and where they're going. Maybe there's enough hope amongst people my generation. Again, the people going out and seeing these movies, they want to go relive some of the glory days of the MCU. So we're gonna see. Now I'm gonna shift into a movie review section. So I did go see Her Private Hell this weekend, and wanted to talk about it a little bit. Obviously, it was kind of like on a Friday. I had a little time. I was like, okay, I'll go see something. What's on? Oh, there's not a lot. One, because the Odyssey is literally taking over so many screens, which is a great thing for it. But obviously, a lot of smart people moved the release dates or worked around the Odyssey. So there's not a lot coming out the weekend after the Odyssey, except for things like Her Private Hell. There's a couple other releases in there as well. But I decided, you know what, I'll go see Her Private Hell. I believe it debuted at Cannes this year, and generally not well looked upon among critics. Nonetheless, I had some time. I was like, I'll go see it. At least the trailer, it looked very aesthetically pleasing. That is something I really value in film. Whether or not the story is that great, I do enjoy the aesthetics of movies. So went to watch it, and the critics were pretty right. It was quite boring, quite confusing, really all over the place. It is extremely visually beautiful. I will give them that. And I really liked, I will say another thing I really enjoyed, is it had a musical theme. And as someone who plays piano, who enjoys music scores, that's something that I was listening to soundtracks from Shutter Island and Inception long before I even watched the movies. That's really one of the main things that got me into film was the music. Recent years, Hans Zimmer, all these people, they've shifted from distinct themes. Ludwig Göransson as well. There's a lot less themes in movies these years, and it's more, soundscapes, moods. They work really well for film. But there's nothing that you're like humming in the back of your mind. Oh, that's a beautiful theme. I think of something like On Golden Pond, something more famous like Jurassic Park or the Star Wars main theme. Very thematic. John Williams was very thematic in how he did his movies. You think of something even into this century, like The Lord of the Rings, Howard Shore's beautiful score. And I don't think Her Private Hell's score reaches up to those heights, certainly. But I will say it was interesting. This is the first film I have gone to in a long time that leaving the theater, the theme was still kind of stuck in my head, and I was thinking about it. It wasn't a lot, like most of the movies in 2026 so far that have been like the soundtrack is there to basically act as a background for whatever's going on in the movie. So there was actually some thematic content. I enjoyed that a lot. A beautiful film. The neon lights. It's cyberpunk is one of my favorite, subgenres. I mean, there was a lot of potential, but there was a couple things that were weird. One for me is that the world feels very empty. There was like no one around except the few main characters. So in a huge city, foggy city with all these lights, it's just weird to not see many people. Uh, it it truly feels empty, and there's not a lot of lore explained. And I am not asking for a lot of exposition, but even the movie itself was so confusing that not a lot of the lore behind the Leatherman or why they're in this cyberpunk city or why fog comes around when the Leatherman comes around. There's not much lore being built there. Even, something like Blade Runner 2049 or the original Blade Runner, very aesthetically pleasing. And you start understanding more of the world as you watch the movie through the story, right? It should be story first. I don't want to build a lore of this cool world and then have nothing interesting in it for sure. But you've got a story-driven lore for these sci-fi fantasy stories is really important. Didn't really get that. I'm not even sure fully what to think about the story. It was kind of confusing, and maybe I'm missing that, right? Maybe her private hell is that she's in this empty cyber world with a bunch of people who she kind of hates or something like that. I don't know. It's kind of weird. The other weird thing about it is the genre. It was labeled as a horror movie. It wasn't really a horror movie. There was like two parts that felt like a horror movie. They're looking across the skyscrapers and they see a woman get murdered in her apartment. That's it. Okay. That happens like once. Toward the end, there's a second scene like that. That's it. Not a lot of tension built, not a lot of fear. So labeling it as a horror movie is weird. And then if you label it like as drama or something, there's just so little going on, so little people interacting. It's not very coherent. It's like, it's not quite that either. I don't know. It's weird. Just not a lot of suspense, and everyone kind of talks fly. It's actually kind of like very Nolan dialogue-y, but without actually explaining anything. It's just kind of flat, confusing. Nothing. There's a bunch of different like subplots going on, but nothing really builds up together to anything. And so, it's just a bunch of stories going on in this little world. And so maybe I just did not understand the whole movie as a whole, and that's probably what it is. It seems though like a lot of critics also did not understand it, so I might not be alone in that. Obviously, like I could say, well, this happened first, and then this happened, and then this happened. This whole time they're like filming a movie in the background, and there's like one scene that we see of them filming this sci-fi Barbarella-esque movie, and one of the characters just like middle of a take is like, I want to talk about the Leatherman. Let's have some girl gossip time. And they all kind of like go over to a couch and talk. And it's like, where's the crew? Who's filming this? Like, what is going on here? It's very strange. So, not the best movie. I didn't really, I understand what was going on, but I didn't understand what it meant. It didn't seem to have a lot of cultural significance in it. And I don't want to be too harsh here either. I'm just honestly perplexed and don't understand it. It might be something, say someone writes a wonderful essay on this is the true meaning of her private hell and this is what it's trying to say. And then I rewatch it with new eyes. That may help. But in general, if upon a relatively intelligent person, if they can't at least get 90% of what you're trying to say in a movie, you've maybe buried the plot or buried, the lead a little too much. So, it was fine. I definitely loved the gorgeous visuals, and I like a lot of the people who acted in it, in a lot of the projects they've done before, but it just kind of fell flat. So definitely wasn't the most amazing movie to see on a Friday afternoon, but thought I would talk about that a little bit. Obviously, since that's just kind of like a small movie coming out, I didn't really want to just end there for the podcast today. So now we're going to move on to my little 135 segment. We're going to talk about one disappointment this year, three hidden gems, and then my five favorite movies of the year. So starting out, and this could or could not be, I'm not going to say, my least favorite movie of the year. It could also just be a movie that I was very much anticipating great things and didn't get that. And something like Supergirl could probably fit this category, even though I enjoyed that a lot more than a lot of other movies this year. But the one that really stood out to me is Super Mario Galaxy. It's a really weird thing, and maybe I overvalued the first one. That is a very real point. I haven't seen it since I saw it the first time in theaters, but I remember going with some friends to see the Super Mario Bros. Movie and actually really enjoying it. I thought it was fun. It was interesting. It brought back a lot of those moments of childhood playing Mario Kart Wii, things like that, maybe on the DS as well. And not just Mario Kart, like any of the Mario games. There's enough, but Easter eggs that a lot of people knew, right? Obviously, the Wii was kind of like the MCU. Yeah, Nintendo's been around a long time, but the Wii was when it was most popular. That's when almost every household had one. Parents who never had played a video game in their life would play Wii. It definitely had an important thing. And obviously these Mario characters, they've been around for a while. There was like one live action movie back last century and kind of weird. But this year, like this Super Mario Bros. Movie felt a little more authentic. There was a fun little journey. It was also focused on a story. Super Mario Galaxy felt nothing like that. The Easter eggs were more vague, more strange. They brought in a couple people like Rosalina and Star Fox. There was definitely some fun moments in it, but it felt like ADHD the movie in a similar way to Minecraft, right? Both these movies did extremely well. I mean, this one made over $1 billion worldwide. So Super Mario Galaxy is definitely not a flop. It is just slightly disappointing in that and not by slightly, I mean, actually, it was disappointing to me that it didn't seem to live up to the childlike joy I felt the first one. I was sitting there like, when is this over? It feels long. And part of that is every minute to 3 minutes, they're changing what they're doing, and there's not a lot of coherence. There's not a lot of building up to something. There's not even like this, like the first one had maybe more of like a, hero's journey-esque simple plot, but that people could follow. This felt more like your attention span is so small that we're going to make you watch another reel every couple minutes. That's really what it felt like. And for some of the most influential characters of all time, for some of the greatest creators, Nintendo has made some amazing pieces of IP. And for something coming after the Super Mario Bros. Movie, which did feel like I loved the platformer elements in Super Mario Bros. That felt very fun and just reminiscent of what it is. It's a video game movie. I really like that. Super Mario Galaxy did not quite go that way for me. And I am curious where this is going to go, because for a while there, after superheroes, people were like, well, what's the next big thing, right? We've had Westerns, we've had epics. Each generation has their own focus of like, these are the movies that we're all as a culture coming around. And a lot of people thought maybe video game movies are next. There's a lot of great video game IPs, and that is something I do agree with. And there have been an influx of video game movies this decade and shows. I mean, Fallout show is actually pretty good. I really enjoy that one. But a large majority of these have not been great. Minecraft and Super Mario Galaxy have been, box office successes, but critically lacking a lot. Borderlands was none for both, and so part of me is seeing that the generation that is going out and buying movie tickets, going and seeing them, they're not going to these movies. The success is there for some of the kids related ones. We're probably going to see a lot more of those, but in general, Uncharted, Borderlands, a lot of these movies did not do as well, and I don't know if that truly is the era. I think it was something that they were dipping their toe in, but it's not something the culture came around, right? People weren't interested in superhero movies unless you were a superhero nerd, or at least on the fringes of that, until the MCU came around, and then everyone, their grandparents, their parents, they all came together and enjoyed these films. That hasn't happened with video game movies. We're obviously right now, I'd say in the 2020s, in a horror like renaissance. We're getting a lot of great horror directors. Obsession was amazing earlier this year, and I'm curious where we're going to go, but it does seem to be right now the thing that seems to be the most interesting is the YouTube creator to movie director pipeline for original stories. That is definitely something more emerging in 2026. We've seen that with Backrooms. We've seen that with Obsession. But I mean, that even goes back to Key and Peele as well, right? So it's not an unheard of thing, but certainly something I think we're going to see a lot more of as time goes on. And it might be those kind of movies that really bring people together. And like Obsession this year, everyone goes see and sees it. So yeah, that's for my one disappointment. For 3 hidden gems. And this is tricky. I'm gonna also show how many thousand views they have in Letterboxd, and you'll see some of these have been watched significantly more than others. So not all of them are as hidden as I'd say, but I would call them hidden in terms of some of these are actual hidden gems. Like very few people have watched this, and some of these are maybe a movie that got released on Netflix. A lot of people saw it on a weekend, but then no one's talked about it since. But it was actually kind of enjoyable and solid. And I will say, for some years, hidden gems can be something that's genuinely like amazing, maybe even better than some of the critically acclaimed or box office successes. That is the way some of these hidden gems work. One of the ones I really love is like Sometimes I Think About Dying. Great movie, really interesting. This year, the 3 hidden gems, at least that I'm going to share right now, they're pretty good movies. They're not necessarily great, but I enjoyed them a lot. And so I would just suggest maybe go and seeing them if you haven't seen them already, but some that I enjoyed. So we're going to start with the least hidden of the hidden gems, and I'd say that's Apex. It's a Netflix movie that was made earlier this year. It has 405,000 views on Letterboxd, so definitely a lot more. But this is the one I was talking about where it got released on Netflix. It was on the front page for like a weekend, and then I haven't heard anyone talk about it since. And it's definitely not something that maybe even needs to be talked a lot about since, other than the fact that I did enjoy my time watching it. And it reminded me a lot of like mid-budget movies from the 2000s. We don't see a lot of that anymore. And I don't know how much they spent on it. Probably more than they should have, as these usually go. But it was enjoyable as Charlize Theron and Taron Egerton in it. Taron Egerton plays like this deranged, serial killer kind of guy, and Charlize Theron's like an adventurer. Let's go rock climbing, whitewater rafting, all that kind of thing. Loses dealing with the loss of her partner in a climb at one point, and so definitely, I mean, that description. Serial killer movies, adventure movies, they're dime a dozen. And I wouldn't say this one necessarily has anything that really rises above or makes it better than all of those. But I enjoyed the atmosphere. I enjoyed my time watching it, and the actors did a great job in it. And it just reminded me of like back in the heyday of the mid-budget movie of like, this is not meant for box office billions of dollars. This is not meant for critics to win at the Oscars. This is just meant for a couple of you people that might really enjoy this and have a good time. And it reminds me of that. I think I like that. And it definitely had some themes. And artistically, I really loved the atmosphere. It's in Australia. It's cool. It's pretty. So good to look at. But yeah, definitely not anything very special, but definitely something I haven't heard a lot of people talking about. And I personally enjoyed it. So definitely would recommend checking that one out. Another one that recently came out, at least wide release wise, was The Furious. It has 129,000 views on Letterboxd, so definitely a lot less. This is a Asian, like Chinese film that is kung fu, your Jackie Chan style combat movie. And kind of in the line of the John Wicks or Nobody or Normal, like some of those movies where it's like one-man army, he's going out killing a bunch of people, something happened to him. This one has a little bit more story to that. It's actually a two-man army in this case. There's a reporter looking for his wife who's missing. She was investigating something and has disappeared. And then there's a father whose daughter gets kidnapped. A little more compelling than maybe a dog getting shot, although I love the John Wick movies. And the action, I will say, is just impeccable. It's amazing. It's thrilling. There's so little dialogue in this movie because you don't need it. It's just epic fight scene after epic fight scene, and creative too. It's not all just the same gunshots or knife fights. There's like a character who just rams everything with his head. He's kind of like something straight out of like an anime or something. It's wild. So really enjoyable. Probably drags on a little too long. There's definitely times where it feels like, okay, the fight can end now. But I really enjoyed it. It had a decent setup to a story. It was genuinely just a really fun time. So definitely recommend checking that out. And finally, this is the most hidden of the hidden gems, Carolina, Caroline. This is a movie I've been looking forward to for over a year. I'm a big fan of Samara Weaving, and I saw that she was going to be in this movie. Saw that it did pretty well critically. I believe it was TIFF last year. I could be wrong on that. But this has 29,000 views on Letterboxd, so not a lot of people have seen it. I did get to go see it in theaters the beginning of this year for its wide release. And it's kind of a classic Bonnie and Clyde story. You know, girl runs away with a guy, and he's a bank robber, and they start robbing banks together. It's enjoyable. It has some good needle drops. Samara Weaving and Kyle Gallner are great in it. They have some fun chemistry, and it's just a good Americana style movie. And one of the most interesting things in it is Kyle Gallner. His character like has this money trick, which is apparently pretty well known amongst like gas station clerks and stuff. It's a common scam of how you can get someone to like through changing money. Actually, can I have this change? Actually, can I give you this? And kind of through confusion, people get confused. They're not tracking whose money is who, and you end up walking away with almost double what you put down. So that is a really interesting little trick that they put into this, and hard to follow, but that's kind of part of the fun of it. It makes you want to think, and it's a real thing. It's not just like a confusing trick. This is an actual scam people pull off. So that's just entertaining to think about, and like the costume design, like the art direction, the needle drops are fun. It's a good story. This isn't a movie that's like, this is the best movie I've ever seen, or this is the best kind of movie of this kind, Americana style Bonnie and Clyde movies that I've seen. But I really enjoyed it. I liked the acting in it. I liked the energy behind it, and so few people have seen it. So definitely recommend go and check that out if you haven't already. Okay, finally, I'm going to list off my 5 favorite movies this year, and we'll talk about them a little at a time. So starting at number 5 is Project Hail Mary. Obviously, Odyssey is not out of contention for this. It came out in July, so it's not the first half of the year. But so far, 5, Project Hail Mary. Now, I will say this is a weird one for me because I was actually kind of disappointed by the movie when I first went and saw it. It is a very good movie, but it was kind of falsely advertised as like the next Interstellar. And I love my Interstellar. I mean, it's one of my favorite movies of all time. So going into it, I was expecting something thoughtful, deep, meaningful, and maybe not necessarily so cheery and goofy like what we got. Now, visually, I will say this is a very spectacular movie. So they nailed that on the head. Visually, like Interstellar, Project Hail Mary is amazing. Ryan Gosling, I love him in everything he does. So he's does a great job once again and has great time with Rocky. You really feel their friendship. Rocky's this little alien creature. If you haven't seen it already, pretty early on you meet him and just trying to save the universe. It's kind of obviously created by the same people behind The Martian, which is another movie. I'm a big sci-fi movie fan. I'm a big space movie fan. Also not one of my favorites. And I think it might be this little humorous, almost Avengers level comedy that they throw in this kind of movie. And excuse me, it's not the same creators as The Martian. It is the same author who wrote The Martian, Andy Weir, who wrote this Project Hail Mary. And I would say I probably prefer this of the two. And it's a very solid movie. It's great. A lot of people went out and saw it. An original story, even if it's an adaptation. So a lot to love about this movie. And visually, it is spectacular. They did some cool stuff with IR cameras to get some of the effects in this movie. And it's a fun time. It's an enjoyable movie for sure. I'll need to definitely rewatch it here soon. So, number 4, Backrooms. Now, this is a movie, one of the YouTube creator to movie pipelines, right? This was directed by Kane Parsons. He's like 18, 19 years old. Very young director. And really just a cool story. Made so much money. So many people came out and saw it because they were familiar. And this is, once again, something that's very popular in this day and age. Studios love to hear, wait, there's already a built-in audience for this? This is great. And there was. People knew the Backrooms. I did not, personally. I knew of them, but I had not watched that until after watching the movie. I didn't see the short. But people who were familiar with it, they went out, they saw this movie, they were excited. And we've seen that a little bit. We saw that with Iron Lung earlier this year, and a little bit with Obsession with Curry Barker. So definitely a lot of YouTube creators this year making feature films, fans of that. Even people who haven't. I went and saw Iron Lung with a guy who almost never watches movies, but he was interested in this one because it was Markiplier who made it. So definitely a common thing we're seeing. Backrooms was cool. I liked it. It's definitely plays into the kind of horror I like, in that it's this strange world that keeps unfolding the more and more you look into it. And Backrooms is just that. I mean, the weird geometries, liminal spaces. I've been following that subreddit for a while. I love the pictures. I love the way it makes me feel being in those spaces. And so having liminal space, the movie essentially, is just really cool. And some of the cast was great in it. I liked seeing Renata Reinsva. Obviously, she's come off a lot of critically successful movies into a little more popular. And Chiwetel Ejiofor, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, really enjoyed his performance in this as well. So there were some scary moments. It's definitely not the scariest horror movie I've ever seen. It definitely didn't necessarily terrify me, but there were some good jumps in there, and more so, I just loved being in that world. Definitely could have gone on a little longer. The ending, the third act, was probably maybe the weakest part of the movie, but it's a good start, and it sounds like they're making a sequel anyway, so we'll see where it develops from there. Really enjoyed this film. So number 3 is actually a kids movie. It's Toy Story 5, and this is not a movie I thought I would be putting on my top 5. Going into it, I'm like, this is another Disney cash grab, whatever. And leaving that, I was like, oh, so this is where all of Disney's great writers have been. Toy Story 5 really did a fantastic job leaning in to that childlike wonder, and really a great movie for people who grew up with the original Toy Story movies, right? These movies have been going on since 95, over 30 years, and Toy Story is such an important franchise, and what I love is that each release they've had, probably the weakest is their 4th movie, but each release they've tried to find a new way of how do we deal with this stage of life and their relationship with toys. And this one did a really great job. It felt like it might have been a little gimmicky at first, but they balanced it so well, and it was really asking the question of what is the value and purpose of toys in a kid's life in an age where everyone's glued to their iPads and technology. What role does technology have in play and in life? And I think it balanced it so well. I love, there's also these like kind of subplot of all these Buzz Lightyears coming, like an army of them. They're programmed to find Zurg, but they're coming into the real world, and then one by one they start finding the purpose that the first Toy Story movies told us of, like the purpose of a toy is to be there for your kid, for Andy, for all these, Bonnie, for all these characters throughout the years. And I really like that they focused on Jessie in this story, and her, obviously Toy Story 2, one of the saddest scenes is seeing her, Emily, I believe, drive away without her toy, and focusing a little bit on that again, and finding yet another kid who fits in this, and then dealing with the there's a lot of tension between the toys and these electronic characters, and soon finding a happy medium, right? We learn later on that some of these Buzz Lightyears are actually drones, which is perfectly fits into 2026 and this era. But I think it did it in a way that didn't feel gimmicky. It didn't feel, some of the like COVID era films felt very like, oh, this is just a direct response to COVID. Glass Onion, I think, has aged pretty poorly because of that. And this one did not feel as gimmicky. It felt like an important conversation to have of what is the role of technology in kids' lives and in our lives, even as adults today, when action figures and Legos were the thing of the day back then. So I thought it was a very sweet movie. It brought back a lot of feelings that the originals did, and it attacked a new topic well. And I think that's great when you can do all three, right? Revisit something old people love, tell just a good story in general, and then also, if you can, ask something philosophically interesting to give something for people to think about. And obviously, most kids leaving that are probably not thinking about, oh, well, what's the effect of technology on kids' lives? But it's still interesting as an adult to see that. Final two. Number two is the drama for me. And like with Toy Story, but even to a greater extent, the drama asks a very philosophical question, and that is, why are there certain things in our society that even the thought of doing so makes you an outcast, ostracizes you from the rest of people, when there's so many things people take for granted every day that is just, well, that's not the greatest thing, but it's whatever, And it's really looking at morality of people and judging people. How do we judge people as a society based on the list we've lined out in our heads of this is the worst thing you could do or even think of doing to the best. And it frames it in this kind of weird, dark rom-com. Robert Pattinson and Zendaya are coming together in marriage, and it's kind of in the last week leading up to their wedding, and everything starts going wrong as more and more is revealed. Just a couple spoilers here. Obviously, so the thing they're talking about here is Zendaya's planned a school shooting when she was a kid, and the reality is everyone around that table has done some pretty awful things, dealing with the kid who's, mentally not fully developed there, cyberbullying, all sorts of different things that are just really not good. It also shows a nice little parallel when Robert Pattinson gets tempted to have an affair, but then backs out of it. And it really shows kind of a parallel to, okay, well, she thought of doing this school shooting, but she didn't. Definitely a really interesting comparison of like, what happens if you even think of doing something that society considers as really bad. And one thing I really love is that the movie ends with them coming together on like a first date again. And it shows kind of right back to the beginning of now they can see each other for the first time. And I think that's really beautiful, is that, they love each other so much at the beginning, but there's so much they don't know. And even if they don't respond in the most perfect ways, even if there's things that they've done that society would view as really dirty and awful, that doesn't define who they are now. And at the end of the movie, they now have seen each other fully and get to now know each other a lot more fully because of that. So I think it's a really cool movie and just really analyzes a social commentary on the way we view people, the way we judge people, and what we as society judges as and ranks as the worst kind of thing to the best. So I really like it. It gives you a lot to think about. And kind of in pair with that came Obsession. Now, this is the breakout hit of this year. It was made for $750,000 by Curry Barker, guy from Mobile, Alabama, 26-year-old YouTube creator turned movie filmmaker. And it has been such a success that he has gone on and gotten contracts to make all sorts of movies. The reins of Texas Chainsaw Massacre have been handed over to him. He's a very talented guy, and we're going to see what he does with the rest of this, but it's also one of the first movies to, it came out. I was excited about it before I went and saw opening weekend, and then word of mouth just grew and grew. Social media presence grew and grew, and second weekend was bigger than the first, and then third weekend was bigger than both the first and second. And that's the first time that's happened, outside of maybe Christmas or maybe at all since 82 with E2. with E.T. So really impressive run. By the time it was going to streaming, it was made over like $400 million. So huge profit margins. And it really shows, once again, people our generation going out and seeing these movies. They want original stories and they want something that is going to grip them in a different way. One thing I really like with Curry Barker is this is a horror movie. And he said, like, I don't want cheap scares anymore. You know, you walk through the room and then maybe the fold out bed like just drops and it gives everyone a jump and it scares them. And it's true, this movie, there's not a lot of that. He avoided that. It's genuinely kind of scary. The instability of Indy Navarrette's character is phenomenal. She's obviously the breakout star here, and I think there's even an Oscar campaign in for her and the best actress, which would be amazing for a horror movie to make, but she would definitely deserve it if she got it. But that instability, and then it deals with all these questions. And some of my favorite sci-fi things that we see in shows like Severance or in a movie like Obsession is when most of the world is the same, but there's one element that's different. And in this case, there's something called a one-wish willow. You break it, you make one wish, and it comes true. And it follows this character, Bear. He breaks it, and because he wants Nikki to love him more than anyone else. And she becomes obsessed with him because of that. But we start seeing there's so many layers to this, right? There's his selfishness and wanting that, but then getting what he's always wanted and realizing that's not quite what he wanted. There's also the element of like Nikki's not quite fully there because it's obviously this magical wish machine that is causing her to act the way she is. And there's just so many levels. And what I love about this movie is the last 5 minutes really tie everything together with a bow. Everything just comes together in a way that you didn't see coming. And it's like those early Nolan movies with like, you know, Memento, or in middle movies like Inception, movies like Shutter Island, you know, and even The Usual Suspects, where the last couple minutes changes your perspective on the entire film. And I think it does such a good job wrapping up everything with a bow. And where our character Nikki is left is truly horrific, truly terrifying. I don't know where she goes from there. And it leaves the audience in a similar boat of just terrified. The freaky movements that you see. And it's not even like a mask killer. Oh, who's behind the mask? That's not driving the fear. It's not something spiritual, which I was waiting for them to be like, oh, it's a witch that's possessing her. Because that's what so many modern elevated horror goes to, is like something spiritual and unsettling. But this wasn't that. It was just one sci-fi element that propelled a story, and the scariness was more in the awkward movements that she was going through, being Bear and dealing with a now obsessed getting exactly what you asked for, and being Nikki is terrifying too, and being what if you were being forced kind of into that relationship. So definitely a terrifying movie through and through. Very creative. The music is beautiful. The art direction is beautiful. And the story just wraps up everything with a bow. It is phenomenal. And so many people have seen it that I'm sure most of you have too. But if you haven't, go out and see it. That's definitely been my favorite this year. And I think it's going to be pretty hard to beat looking at the slate coming up here in the rest of the year as well. So definitely just an immediate classic, an immediate hit for me, and my favorite of the year. Well, that's where we're going to leave it. Thanks for listening to today's podcast. Definitely a little different than what we normally have done, but I hope you enjoyed it anyway. Thanks for listening, and have a great day.